price of eggs.
The first thing you see is that none of the states are doing well.
Even in the best performing states like New Hampshire and North Dakota, only about 60% of families can earn enough to afford basic necessities.
Nationwide, 46%.
In America, even just living a normal life is starting to feel like a struggle. If you live here, you know what's going on. Millions of people are still going to work, still getting paid, but they're starting to cut back on the very things they need just to live. Not vacations, not luxury stuff. Food, medicine, electricity, and even transportation. And if more and more families have to live, like, this is really just about prices going up, or is the American standard of living actually going down? For a lot of families, 2026 could become one of the hardest years they have ever been through just trying to keep up with everyday life. Today, let's hear from people who are living through exactly that and see just how far these cutbacks have gone. Because what's worrying isn't just what Americans have to cut today. It's how much further their lives could be pushed down if this keeps going. Is there any way out of this downward spiral, or are our children and grandchildren going to end up living even worse lives? When Americans start crossing food off the grocery list, the first problem, and the one that bothers me the most, is that food prices are forcing some people to cut familiar foods out of their everyday lives completely. They are not switching restaurants. They are not giving up some luxury item. They are standing right there in the grocery store looking at things that used to be a normal part of their kitchen and telling themselves, I am not buying this anymore. Listen to what this woman has to say.
Groceries have gotten so expensive, I now keep a list of all the things that I refuse to buy. Not can't buy. I just will not buy. Beef? Oh, that's off the list. I don't buy that at all anymore. Unless the cow is going to personally...
She has started keeping a list of things she refuses to buy because the prices are just too high. Beef completely off the list. And this is where I think we should really pay attention. When money starts deciding which foods are still allowed on the dinner table, the problem is no longer just about a price tag. It is changing the way a family eats. If you have been buying groceries for your family for 20 or 30 years, you know exactly what I mean. You know what kind of meat you usually buy. You know roughly how much a gallon of milk, a bag of fruit, or dinner for 4 usually costs. So when you have to stand in front of something you have always bought and ask yourself whether you can actually afford it this week, that is not a small change. And it does not stop with giving up beef. A family of 5 in Texas has had to make major changes in how they buy and prepare food. Ground beef has gradually disappeared from their regular meals. Some familiar brands have been replaced with cheaper ones, while chicken and cold cuts have become their main sources of protein. If that were as far as it went, I could still call it adapting. But when the daughter's income dropped, there were times when the family could only afford to make 1 full meal a day. The other meals were much simpler. That is the line where I do not think we should downplay what is happening with advice, like just shop smarter. And switching brands is saving money. Shopping sales is saving money. Cutting out snacks can be saving money too. But cutting back on the number of full meals is no longer a budgeting trick. That is when the amount of money in the bank starts deciding how much a family gets to eat. Another family in San Francisco has had to piece together food from several different sources. Cheaper groceries, SNAP, leftover food from preschool, and food that the 77-year-old grandmother gets from a food bank and brings home to share with the whole family. I think this is the part and that is easy to miss. From the outside, a family like this can still look completely normal. The adults are still going to work, the kids are still going to school, the car is still parked out front, but inside the kitchen, every single food item is being reconsidered. And that feeling of paying more while getting less is not only happening in America. One shopper in the UK put it very plainly.
The question is your wage rising at the same rate as everything else? And to add further insult, the price of food is increasing.
She asks a very simple question. Is your paycheck going up as fast as everything else? Meanwhile, food prices are rising, but shoppers feel like both the amount of food they are getting and the quality of it are going down. I am not using one person in the UK to speak for America, but that feeling is worth paying attention to because it points to a very basic kind of pressure. Food is an expense you cannot simply cancel. You can cancel Netflix, you can skip a vacation, and you can put off buying a TV. But tomorrow morning you still have to eat. And if you are in your 60s or 70s, this becomes even more serious. If you have diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or you're taking care of a family member with a health condition, you cannot solve everything by saying just buy the cheapest thing. You need to eat foods that are right for your health. That is why I see food as the first real warning sign. People do not go from a full grocery cart to not having enough food overnight. It starts with one item getting cut, then another, then the meals get smaller. And by that point, saving money has started affecting how much food is actually on the table. Medications and healthcare are starting to get cut too. The second problem is much more serious. People are starting to cut back on medications and medical treatment too. A prescription is not like a new pair of shoes. You cannot look at the price and say, forget it, I will buy it next year. The doctor prescribed it because your body needs it. But the reality is that some patients know exactly what medication they need, and they still do not know whether they are going to get it in time. Listen to this woman.
Will I get my life-saving medication by Christmas? After my last response, saying that I got the prior authorization approved, I thought we were in the clear.
She calls it her life-saving medication. That sentence alone is enough to make me feel like this is completely different from ordinary shopping. When you are sick, you do not want to spend your whole day calling the insurance company, calling the pharmacy, waiting for approval, and wondering whether the treatment you need is going to show up before your condition gets worse. But even getting the prescription filled is not the end of the problem. Some Americans are changing their own treatment because they simply cannot afford it. KFF found that 43% of American adults said that during the previous 12 months, there was at least one time when they did not take their medications as prescribed because of the cost. 27% did not fill a prescription. 19% said they had cut pills in half or skipped doses to save money. I have to stop on that number for a moment. The doctor says take it every day. The bank account says try to stretch it a few more days. The doctor says take one pill. The patient looks at how many pills are left and wonders if half a pill might be enough. When did a medical decision become something you have to negotiate with the balance in your bank account? And having insurance does not necessarily make things any easier. A doctor talked about a patient who had a confirmed DVT and needed blood thinners. Everything seemed pretty straightforward. There was a diagnosis and there was a medication the patient needed. But then this is what happened.
Because insurance denied it, because they want more information. I just don't even know. This is so broken. It's so broken. We did everything.
The patient left without the medication. This is something I think a lot of families will understand right away. You can work your entire life, pay for insurance year after year, and believe that at least when you get sick, the system will take care of the rest. But when you actually need treatment, you find out that you may still have to make phone calls, wait around, ask for approval, argue about insurance coverage, and figure out how much you can afford to pay yourself. Then people start putting off other things too. A follow-up visit gets pushed to next month. A test has to wait. An appointment with a specialist has not been scheduled yet. A prescription does not get refilled today. The problem is illness does not care when your next paycheck comes. And imagine how painful this is for families taking care of someone they love. When your parents take 4 or 5 medications every day, you are not just keeping track of them when they need to take them. You also have to remember which one is about to run out, how much the next refill will cost, whether insurance will cover it, and what household expense will have to make room for it. That is when healthcare stops being a separate bill. Medication money starts competing with the electric bill. A copay competes with gas money. A doctor visit competes with groceries. And when people start leaving prescriptions unfilled, skipping doses, stretching out their medication, or delaying care just to keep this month's budget from falling apart, cutting back has started affecting their health directly. Electric bills and gas prices are forcing Americans to scale back their lives. The third problem is that people are starting to cut back, even on how they live inside their own homes and how they get around every day. Think about air conditioning first. You have already paid your rent or mortgage. The air conditioner is already installed in the house. It is so hot outside that there is nothing you can do about it. And yet, even inside your own home, you still have to look at the thermostat and think, if I run it a few more hours, what is my bill going to look like this month? This woman is having to make exactly that calculation.
Days I am so sick of Exelon. So I'm already budgeting a lot. I'm budgeting rent, car note, gas, auto insurance, and now I got to figure out whether I want to turn my air conditioner on or off.
She's already figured out the rent, the car payment, gas, auto insurance, and after all that, she still has to figure out whether she should turn on the air conditioning. Hearing that really bothers me, because we are not talking about turning the AC down a little more just to be comfortable. If you have elderly parents, young children, or someone in the house who is not in good health, keeping the house cool enough can be something you really do not want to bargain over because of the electric bill. But the bill still comes. And this pressure is not just showing up in one household. Un Bujo so san 2024-2026. In 2026, about 80% of Americans surveyed said extreme heat had affected their electric bills. In 2024, that number was 69%. That does not mean 80% of people are turning off their air conditioning, but it does tell us something very easy to understand. Keeping the house comfortable, it's costing a lot more money for a lot of people. And if the bill gets too high, you only have a few choices. Pay more, run it less. Raise the temperature, cool only part of the house. None of those choices makes life any easier, but staying home does not solve the problem either. In a lot of places across America, you need a car just to live a normal life. You need a car to get to work. You need one to go to the grocery store. You need one to see the doctor. Taking your kids to school, picking up medication, and visiting your parents, all of it starts with putting gas in the tank. One woman just put $77 into her tank.
So it's $77, and that wasn't even the full tank. Yeah, it just seems like a lot. It's very sad every time I have to pay for that. I used to have a...
And the tank still was not full. That is when gas money stops being just an annoying number on the sign. If that $77 were for a road trip, you could cancel the trip. But what if that is the money you need just to get to work all week? You still have to drive. You just start thinking harder before every trip. Maybe you combine several errands into one trip. Maybe you put off a trip that is not urgent. If the car starts making a strange noise, you hope it can keep going a few more weeks before you take it in for repairs. And this is the part that can really wear people down. You go to work to make money. But just to get to work, you are already paying for the car gas insurance repairs, and sometimes tolls and parking too. If those costs keep going up while your paycheck does not, you cannot tell your car to stop breaking down, and you cannot tell your company to move closer to your house. So people adjust their lives. Run the AC less, drive less, put something off. Combine a few trips into one. Try to keep the car going for another month before getting it fixed. From the outside, the house still has electricity. The car is still sitting in the driveway. People are still going to work. But inside, the way they live every day has already had to change just to keep the bills within what they can afford. And that is when cutting back is no longer just about food or medicine. It has made its way into the home itself, and into every trip a family takes. 47% are spending less on both food and medical care. At this point, if everything we have just seen were only a few people going through a hard time, I think the story would already be worrying enough. One person cuts back on food, someone else has to think about medication costs, some families start using the air conditioning less while others look at gas prices and have to rethink every trip they make. You could look at each case separately and think maybe they are just going through their own difficult stretch. But the problem is when you look at the bigger picture, the story is not that small anymore. Take a look at this number.
1,000 voters around the country finding that 47% are spending less on essential items like groceries and medical care. You can see that's up 6 points.
47% of the people surveyed said they are spending less on essentials like groceries and medical care. And that share has gone up by 6 points. I'm not saying nearly half of America is skipping meals or going without medication. This number does not prove that. But think about where people are having to cut back. Not a new TV. Not a summer vacation, not a few things that can wait until next year. They're talking about expenses that should be very high on a family's priority list. A household can always start with the things that are easier to cut. Eat out less, do not buy new clothes, keep the same phone for another year, but eventually those cuts are not enough anymore. That is when you start looking at food, doctor visits, electricity, the money it takes to keep the car running, and asking yourself where you can cut this month. And this is the part that is very easy to miss from the outside. A family can still go to work every morning, still have a car in the driveway, still pay the mortgage, and still turn the lights on at night. There may be no single moment that looks like a crisis, but the people inside that home know exactly what they had to give up to keep everything else going. One family keeps paying for medication, so they cut back on food. Another protects the grocery budget but uses less electricity. Someone else still pays every bill, but hears a strange noise coming from the car and tells themselves, just make it a few more weeks, then I will get it fixed. Not everyone is cutting the same thing. Maybe that is exactly why this can look like a bunch of unrelated problems. But if a lot of families are having to take money away from one necessity just to protect another necessity, then we should be asking a bigger question. Why is a normal life making it harder and harder to afford all the basics at the same time? That is the next part we need to look at. Americans have already cut back as far as they can. Suppose you've already done almost everything people usually tell you to do. You shop less. You put off things you do not need yet. You keep the same phone for another year. You do not replace the car. The easy things to cut have already been cut. Fine. But this is also where the math starts getting a lot harder because the amount of money coming into the household is still the same while the bills you have to pay do not just disappear. The rent or mortgage still comes. Insurance still comes. The utility bills still come. The car still needs gas, still needs maintenance. And sometimes it breaks down at exactly the worst possible time. Medical costs do not ask whether your budget is tight this month either. All of those expenses are pulling money from the same source of income, and that income does not automatically go up just because 3 bills went up in the same month. This is where I think a lot of advice like you just need to manage your money better starts to sound way too simple. Your housing payment does not let you pay 15% less just because this month is hard. Your car payment does not say, that is okay, just make it up next month. Insurance still takes its share. The expenses that are hardest to avoid usually get paid first, so what is left to cut? The things people can still control themselves. A doctor visit can be pushed back, a prescription can be stretched a few more days, the air conditioning can be used less. A trip can be postponed, not because those things matter less, just because those are some of the few places people can still cut with their own hands. At first, a lot of families still have a cushion in the form of savings. The car breaks down, they use savings. An unexpected medical bill shows up, they use savings. A month costs more than usual, they pull out a little more. But if they cannot earn back what they just took out the next month, that emergency cushion keeps getting thinner. Money that was supposed to protect you from one major shock ends up being used just to get through completely normal months. At that point, the question is no longer, what do I give up that I want so I can keep what I need? It becomes, which need do I protect and which need has to take the hit? If you pay for the doctor visit, what has to wait? If you fix the car right away, will there be enough money left to make it to the end of the month? If you have to keep everything going at the same time, where is the money supposed to come from? That is the mechanism behind this entire story. The problem is not just that individual things cost more. The problem is that the budget no longer has enough room for everything that is already necessary. Quality of life starts going down before a family actually falls into crisis. So maybe you and your family have already lost part of your quality of life a long time ago without ever putting a name to it. There's no single day when everything falls apart at once. There's no morning when you wake up and say, starting today, our family's in a crisis. Usually it happens much more quietly. You still go to work. You can still pay the important bills. From the outside, life still looks normal. But before you agree to do something, you start checking your bank account first. A weekend invitation is no longer just do I want to go. Now you also have to think, if I go, how much will I have left at the end of the month? Even making plans for next year becomes harder because you do not know what might come up between now and then. I think what a lot of people miss most is not necessarily a time when they made more money. They miss the feeling of having a little extra left over. It did not have to be much. Just enough so that one unexpected expense would not throw off the entire month. In the past, an expense of a few $100s might have annoyed you. Now it makes you sit down and recalculate everything. Not because you were careless, but because almost every dollar already has somewhere it needs to go. Then life starts getting built around a very simple hope. Please let nothing else happen this month. You hope the car does not break down. You hope your hours at work do not get cut. You hope nobody in the family suddenly needs a large amount of money. You hope the air conditioner, the refrigerator, the roof, or whatever else is getting old can just hang on a little longer. You see, a family does not have to be out of money today to still be living under stress. All it takes is knowing that if more thing goes wrong, they have no idea where the money will come from. And then the bigger plans naturally start getting pushed back too. Retirement gets delayed a little longer. The trip you promised gets moved to the next year. Fixing up the house keeps getting postponed. Even the money you wanted to leave for your children and grandchildren becomes harder to protect. After a while, people get used to living that way. This is what I do not want us to overlook. A family does not have to lose their home, lose their job, or stop paying bills before we can say they are having a problem. They may have already spent years living in a constant state of caution, always worried about one more unexpected expense, and slowly giving up the things that used to make life feel a little easier. But is that all there is? No, because there is something even more important that a lot of people do not realize until it is too late. There are warning signs that your budget is getting very close to the point where just one small problem can trigger a whole chain of difficult decisions, and those warning signs usually show up earlier than people think. If you have to use emergency savings for a normal month, be careful. And this is where I think every family should ask themselves a very difficult question. Am I really saving money, or have I started cutting things I should not be cutting anymore? Those two things can look pretty similar when you look at your bank account. Either way, you're spending less. Either way, you're trying to hold on to your money. But the consequences are very different. If you stop buying new things, put off a trip, or keep your phone for another year, that is saving money. But if a completely normal month forces you to dip into your emergency savings, put off something important, or keep telling yourself, just make it a few more weeks, that is when I would start paying attention. because emergency savings are supposed to be there for emergencies. If nothing unusual has happened and you still have to use that money just to get through the month, then maybe normal everyday life has simply become too expensive for your budget. And there is another warning sign that I think matters even more. You start making decisions that make today easier, but could make next month harder. This is where I would stop. Before cutting an expense, ask yourself 4 very simple questions. Will cutting this affect my health? Will it make it harder for me to get to work or earn money? And will it affect the safety of someone in my home? And if I keep doing this for 3 months, what happens? I like those questions a lot more than advice, like just cut another 10%. Life is not a spreadsheet. Some things when you cut them just make life a little less comfortable. Other things when you cut them can affect your ability to work, create a health problem, or lead to an even bigger expense later. Saving $100 today, only to spend $1,000 3 months from now fixing the damage, is a very bad calculation. And I think we should also talk openly about a very American habit trying to keep every bill looking perfect. Pay everything on time. Do not want to call and ask for help. Do not want to tell your family. Do not want anyone to know you are struggling. I understand that feeling. But if keeping everything paid on time means sacrificing the very things that keep you healthy, safe, and able to keep earning money, then I would ask the opposite question. What exactly are we protecting? Maybe the things we should protect first are the things that help us keep standing. Our health, our safety, our ability to work, our housing, our family's basic needs. And if there really is not enough money for everything, look for more options before you are left with only one option. Call the service provider before the bill is overdue. Ask the hospital pharmacy or insurance company about lower cost options. Check for local assistance programs and talk to family earlier. Those things may feel uncomfortable, but they are still a lot easier than waiting until there is no money left to move around. There is one last question I really want to hear your thoughts on. How much does someone have to cut before we stop calling it living responsibly and start admitting that they are being pushed too far? If a family is working, has already cut the things they do not need, has tried to keep everything paid on time, and still has to sacrifice their health, their safety, or their ability to make a living, would you still call that just a money management problem? I mean, because when there is nothing unnecessary left to cut, the goal should not be to prove how long you can keep enduring it. The goal should be to protect the things that once you lose them are much harder to get back. Americans used to be able to count on something very simple. Work, pay the bills, take care of the family, and still have enough room to breathe. But maybe right now, for a lot of people, even those ordinary things are becoming harder to hold on to than they used to be. Do you recognize your own life in any of what we just talked about? Is there something you once thought you would never have to cut back on, but now you have started thinking twice about it? What do you think? And in your opinion, at what point does saving money stop being about managing your finances and start cutting into your actual quality of life? Do not be afraid to share your story in the comments. I will read them and listen to what you have to say. And subscribe to the channel because we are going to keep looking at the changes that are quietly affecting the lives of Americans every single day.